And then, of course, the fourth one, saving the best for last in this great foursome, Johnny Unitas. Now, this interview was on the sidelines at the Ravens Stadium in 1998. I was doing the sidelines for Fox, and it was the 40th anniversary of the greatest game ever played. Talking to Unitas, and I talked to him so many times over the years in various environments. And Johnny was, what struck me about Johnny is Johnny was so real. There were no airs about him. He said what he wanted to say, and he did what he wanted to do. It's probably what made him great. And I asked Johnny, I said, if you gave anyone that was playing sports a tip, what would you tell them? And he said, I would tell them that, and he said, I don't think enough athletes do this. Whether you win or lose, forget about it, it's over. You can never get ready for the next game if you're worrying about or celebrating the last game. And he said he totally had that attitude. He also talked to me about leadership. He said, you know what, I never hung out with my teammates. He said, because I felt like if you were the leader of the guys, you couldn't be one of the guys. And I thought, that was a profound statement from Unitas. The other thing is that Johnny had a great sense of humor. I was talking to him one time, we were doing a story, this is in the mid-90s, and of course salaries for football players and quarterbacks had gone through the roof. So I said to him, I said, you know, you got Aikman and Elway and Favre, these guys are making $4 or $5 million a year. You never had this payday. If you were playing today, John, what do you think you'd make? He said, I don't know, probably about $1 million. I said, $1 million bucks? I said, John, you're the greatest quarterback ever. He said, Steve, I'm 65. Here's another Unitas story for you. So I'm at Unitas's farm. He had a farm out in Baldwin, I guess it was. The Passing Fancy was the sign as you went on. And I was doing this story on Johnny. Now remember that Johnny had these terrible issues with his right arm late in his career. We used to play in these charity golf tournaments, and they used to have to strap his hand to his club. So I was doing this story, if you remember, Sports Illustrated did this huge story on Johnny and the battle that he had with the NFL. So we're sitting in his trophy room, and he gives me this soundbite about how limited he is. He said, can't button buttons, can't tie a tie, can't hammer a nail, can't put toothpaste on a toothbrush. So the interview's over, we're sitting there, and I said, geez, John, this just sounds terrible. He said, Steve, you try to learn how to wipe your ass with a different hand after 65 years. Quintessential John Unitas. So those are the big four nationally. Johnny's on 2 lists. There's also the big four in Baltimore, and I had an opportunity and have had an opportunity to interact and get to know these guys. I call them Baltimore's Mount Rushmore: Unitas, Brooks, Ray Lewis, Cal Ripken. I talked about Johnny. Brooks, to me, of all my years in sports, is the nicest, most down-to-earth superstar I've ever met. And here's probably the nicest thing you could say about Brooks. Brooks isn't a nice guy for an athlete, because there was always that caveat when you talked about an athlete. Brooks is just a nice guy. And we've done a lot of different things together, charity stuff, public service announcements over the years. And I said to Brooks, I said, why are you such a nice guy and everybody else is so difficult to deal with? And he said, Steve, you know what? It's just as easy to be nice and smile as it is to be mean and frown. So why not smile? You never hear that from an athlete. But Brooks was so down to earth. One time we were doing a public service announcement, and it was Brooks, Lenny Moore, Hall of Famer, Chuck Thompson, Hall of Famer, and me. Who was the odd guy in this foursome? So Brooks and I were talking, and somehow it comes up that my brother's nickname growing up was Little Brooksy, which it's quite common in Baltimore. But we were in Boston. That tells you how transcendent Brooks was, that you'd adopt a nickname of a rival. So I tell him the story, tell him he's an attorney, he's a federal prosecutor now, and 20 minutes later I'm leaving and walking out, and all of a sudden I hear, Steve, Steve! It's a ball from Brooks. Give that to your brother. It says, to Brooksy, from the real Brooksy, Brooks Robinson. Which was great, but who would do that? And I thought that was great. Cal Ripken, covered Cal Ripken throughout his career. This is a shot of Cal and I in Minneapolis when he had what great accomplishment, 3,000 hits. I was the only local sportscaster that covered all of Cal's great accomplishments, 3,000 hits, 400 home runs, and 21-31, because I was the only one that went to Minneapolis. And obviously there were so many incredible experiences with Cal, and to go through 21-31, that is, of any sporting event I've ever seen in my life, and I've been to Super Bowls and World Series and NCAA championships and US Opens, 21-31 for me was the greatest thing I ever saw. It was just, you can go to Super Bowls and again, you'll never see anything like that again in your life. Now people always want something about an athlete, and Cal's lived such a public life. It's very difficult to tell you something that you might not know, but to me, this in a nutshell sums up why Cal Ripken was so great. A few years ago, he was the honorary chairman for the Senior Champions Tour event that was out at Hayfields, and they had an event for the media, and it was a media day to come and play in this event to see the course. People in the media love free stuff, by the way. So I actually missed the golf that day, but I went out for the press conference. And I see him as I'm walking in, and he says, "Where were you?" I said, "Oh, I had a story to do." I said, "Well, what are you doing here?" He said, "Well, I was out on one of the par threes, whatever hole I forget, and every time a media group came by, I'd hit a shot." Now, the last time I had seen Cal, I had asked him about his golf game. He said, "Oh, it stinks. I'm not playing at all. I haven't had any time." So I said, "How did you do?" He said, "Oh, I did pretty well today." I said, "Really? You've been playing more?" He said, "No." He said, this morning I woke up early and I went out to Caves Valley at 7 in the morning, and I went out and got a lesson and practiced so I'd be on my game." I said, "You did that for the media?" But that was Cal. Cal was never and is never going to do anything unless he's going to do it great. I mean, to think that he would make sure that he was on his game for that was shocking unless you know Cal. That's why I think that the best move the Orioles ever could have made and still could make is somehow have Cal run the Orioles. Because even if Cal doesn't know how to do it, the guy will figure it out. And then the fourth guy, Baltimore's Mount Rushmore, is Ray Lewis. The most controversial of all these athletes, there's no doubt about it. He's had highs and lows. I've been critical at times of him over the years. This interview is in his house before the Tennessee Titans game, the year of the Super Bowl. I've been after Ray for a while to do an interview because that, of course, was the year of the fiasco in Atlanta and the murder trial. And so finally during the playoffs, he said, "Come over, watch some film with me." So we're watching film of the Tennessee Titans, and he was such a student of the game. He said, "Watch this," and we're sitting there, and he's got the screen up, fast forwarding, rewinding, all that. He said, "Every time Eddie George does this with his leg, it's a run. Every time he does this with his leg," and it was the smallest, it was like its toe pointed this way or that way, "it's a pass." And he showed me 10 examples. And he said, "Did the coaches tell you that?" He said, "Nope, just pick that up on my own." So I made a decision that I was not going to put that in my story because I didn't want to give it away and make Ray mad. But the one thing about Ray is that, say what you want, a polarizing figure. I've never been around a guy that had more passion to be great and to play his game and to love his game. I think the passion he has is real. A memory I have with Ray is after the Super Bowl at the team hotel, there's a big celebration. And he walks by me and I say, "Hey, Ray, congratulations." A ton of people, you're not going to have a meaningful conversation with anyone. And he said, "I told you I was going to rewrite the story because on this night we were chatting and he said, I need to win the Super Bowl to change the story about me. And I'm going to do that." I said, "You really think they'll forget about what happened in Atlanta?" He said, "They'll never forget, but they'll have something else to talk about afterwards." And I think that there's a greatness to this guy that a lot of people probably don't appreciate. The one other memory I have of the Super Bowl is one of my great regrets in this business. See, I was on the field after the game, after doing all my interviews, and David Modell walks by and he's got the Super Bowl trophy. He says, "Steve, you have to take your picture with the Super Bowl trophy." So I get a picture, I'm holding the trophy. He said, No. You have to kiss the trophy." All right, fine, I'll kiss it. So I kissed the trophy. Late that night, back at my hotel, flip on the TV. It's like 4:30 in the morning. You know, they've won the Super Bowl. I can't sleep. Look at the highlights of the Super Bowl making its way through the Ravens locker room. And there's Tony Siragusa kissing the Super Bowl in the exact same spot that I kissed it. There was not enough Listerine and antiseptic in Tampa to make me feel better about what I had just done.